All right, folks, what just happened? Right. Everybody's got an opinion, but let's say this: light, sound, camera, action. And all you got was sound, smoke, and fury. It was almost Tiranga Yatra. Then it almost like a Khoda, Pahar Nikla Chuha. You have this Arnab Goswami going on about tunnels, and you have got this whole misinformation about nuclear detonate blasts, 3 of them, Richter scale, earthquakes. Nobody's recorded them except India and some guy in Chennai. And we're talking about masks in that part, right? Now, guys, just let's get real, right? I mean, yeah, there was some damage. Now, let's see what really happened. Before we start, I just want to say this, right? What Frederick Merz said on May 14th, 2025, and this is something that you should all think about. Strength deters aggression. Weakness, on the other hand, invites aggression. And that's exactly what's been happening to India, whether it's China, especially China. And China really has a hand in this terror machine in Pakistan. I mean, till we get to that, till we nail that, nothing's going to change. And what is Christine Fair's right? She tells it really the way it is. India lost the narrative on many fronts. Right on the 6th, 7th, when it lost 3, 4, 5 aircrafts, and the way the Air Marshal in Pakistan came out and said, and we are not, our Air Marshal Bharti is being called a liar by her, by he goes and says that, firstly, he doesn't acknowledge whether we've lost or not. He says, yeah, there is always a loss in war, which basically goes to show they lost something. She's claiming that Rafael has definitely said 1 destroyed and 1 seriously damaged, definitely. She says 2 lost, definitely 90% plus, 3 lost, 80% plus, 4 lost, 60%, and 5 lost to 50% and over, right? So this is the global narrative. We might say what we want, right? But globally, what happened that day and what happened subsequently, we may have won the missile war. We may have won the drone war. We may have, as people said, destroyed some bases. But bases are highways. Like our highways get washed away by rain. Our bridges get washed away by rain. So these big targets are going to get nailed, right? And if they get nailed, then you put some cement from Adani, get some steel from China, and you put them up, and they're running. And she also calls a report in Indian Express a lie, which says that 20% of Pakistan's air bases were destroyed and not usable. She says that's a blatant lie, right? But even so, right, the point of the matter is there's some truths and some lies. But the truths about the aircraft, which people are saying, Rafael, so what? Guys, our next year, 15 years air dominance policy was based on this Rafael. If that has been nailed by the Chinese platform with the PL-15, we got to rethink. Can you imagine the kind of money we're spending? And, I'm shocked that Rafael is being flown by the Qatar aircraft. And why Qatar Air Force? Why do I say that? Pakistan has an annual exercise with Air Force exercise with Qatar, so they probably knew what the Rafale was, and that's all been fed back to China, like I'm told about the F-16, right? Now, that's where the technology war was playing out, was in the skies. Everybody says it was probably the largest air battle, and we came out looking very poorly. Now, on the other hand, missiles, right? Cool, we have a great inventory of BrahMos, and maybe S-400 worked a lot better. But what happened is, what New York Times says is, India and Pakistan talk big, but satellite imagery shows limited damage. The 4-day military clash between India and Pakistan was the most expansive fighting in half a century between the two nuclear-armed countries, as both sides used drones and missiles to test each other's air defenses and hit military facilities. They claimed to inflict severe damage. But satellite imagery indicates that while the attacks were widespread, the damage was far more contained than claimed. So this is, folks, is the reality. Now we can just go on and beat our chests about our great S-400, but the technology war, it was fought in the skies, was lost. The global narrative was lost. But let me just tell you about airfields, right? How fast they can come up and running. Just go, I'm taking back to 1971. The operation Pakistan launched targeted 11 of India's airfields and also included artillery strikes on Indian positions in Kashmir. The targets were the Indian air bases of Amritsar, Ambala, Agra, Avantipur, Bikaner, Halwara, Jodhpur, Jaisalmer, Pathankot, Bhuj, Srinagar, and Uttarlai, and air defense radars at Amritsar and Faridkot. And guess what happened? This is the first day of the war. And guess what happened? We got up and kicked some you know what. And we are saying we did all that to Pakistan. And what did we do? Cease fire. Well, that should say it all. And look at, and the biggest loss is the global narrative. Right? Nobody stood up for us. Nobody in the periphery, not the OIC, not the G10, G20, not the G7, not the SCO, not the BRICS. The only country that stood up for us, folks, get it, here it comes. India's Afghanistan outreach points to emerging dynamics, says Dipanjan Rao Chaudhary. All around Afghanistan, Pakistan. And here's where the real game's being played, guys. India gives special entry to 160 Afghanistan trucks via Atari. Now, why I'm putting this out? Because they all came through Pakistan, right? Wow, man. But who stood by, strongly stood by Pakistan? Turkey and China. And all that mattered. Turkey is part of NATO, supplied all those cheap drones, or even if they lost 600 drones, they're almost close to valueless. And China. Realistic pivot in India-Turkey ties. Ankara should realize the potential in a robust relationship with New Delhi and recalibrate its relations with Islamabad. Everybody has figured out India really, really doesn't have much to offer. And that, folks, is going to be a messy reality. But look at what this happened. Now there's news coming out that Jaishankar actually warned, what's it say? He came out in an interview saying he told the Pakistan, and that's why Pakistan was going all ballistic, telling everybody, that India was going to attack, because good old Jaishankar had told them that, right? Jaishankar has foot in the mouth syndrome. Minister D. Jaishankar has said that before start of Operation Sindoor, India informed Pakistan that we would be hitting terrorist infrastructure inside Pakistan. We expected them to understand, but they retaliated. Oh God, what a surprise, Jaishankar. What a surprise, right? Now, I've never heard of or read such bizarre statement, because India breaches Pakistan's sovereignty and expects him to understand, keep quiet. India informs Pakistan beforehand of its operation, thus cautions PAF to stay at maximum alert 6-7 night air battle. By informing Pakistan, India tells it not to retaliate. No self-respecting nation would expect such nonsense. Pakistan informs all world capitals of impending Indian airstrike, positioning them to understand why Pakistan was compelled to retaliate. Folks, okay, India action inside Pak, just a trailer, says Rajnath. You see that poor chief, air chief, he knows what he's lost, folks. He's sitting there, and Rajnath, who has no clue about defense, no clue. And then what? He's being bought out to defend this government. Indirect terror funding. Rajnath slams IMF on 1 billion loan to Pakistan. Well, that's a finger for India, right? India to rebuild canals, dig new ones to tap into Indus. Wow, that's really good. Turkey has been told a lesson. Selby moves High Court after government revokes clearance. Now, battle, and they might take it to international court in Singapore. And guess what might happen? The same thing that happened with GMR in Maldives, right? After Operation Sindoor, tales of Western hypocrisy. This is Barkha Dutt, who's lost her way somewhere. What about Indian hypocrisy? Our hypocrisy is the reason for this fallout, right? And what's happening in the world that you should be watching is the Middle East. This was an NNM operation, I call it. What is NNM? Netanyahu and Modi. And both of them have been left out to dry by the world because conditions are moving fast. Ukraine has an upper hand, Russia's on the back foot. Netanyahu doesn't know what's happening. The United States is dealing directly with Hamas through Qatar, calls the shining age of the Arab world. Right? He's talking to Hamas. He's met the president of Syria, who still has an award of 10 million on his head, right? As a terrorist, right? So Syria, which is something that Israel keeps attacking now, is suddenly shaking. The president is shaking hands with Prime Minister shaking hands with Trump, right? The direct talks with Iran are going on, and just an unconditional ceasefire with the Houthis, right? Unilateral. What's happening there, folks? What's happening? And after that, Israel bombs the Sana'a airport. These two guys have, I am telling you, been left out. And let's just now quickly go down the brief, right? NATO countries are moving towards spending 5% of the GDP on defense by 2032. Watch out, Russia. In the Middle East, Trump continues his tour with a clear message to the world: make business deals with the US, won't meddle in your affairs. Trump met with Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara in Riyadh after he yesterday announced he'll remove sanctions. Trump's visit to the region also cleared the path for several AI deals that are expected to be unveiled in the coming days. Companies from Nvidia to AMD are likely to be involved. Trump heads to the Gulf with deals on the table. The US president's trip to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE has billions of dollars at stake, sometimes with troubling implications. Wow. Germany is another guy to watch out for. After overcoming historic loss, Merz becomes chancellor. Ukraine drone attacks briefly shut down all 4 international airports in Moscow. Like I said, they're not having it easy. And the other guy who's standing his ground to the Trump caravan is Carney. Tough talk. PM Carney tells Trump Canada is not for sale. Donald don't want to say I did, but help settle India-Pakistan problem. And he keeps on saying that, Make iPhones in the US instead of India, Trump to Apple CEO. Trump drops Apple zero tariff claims on India. I mean, why is he doing that to us? You got to figure this out, right? And then, this canard being spread by everyone, including somebody I read, very senior person. Oh, no, there definitely was a bomb blast and there were a nuclear atomic. If there was atomic fallout, even of the slightest indication, the first agency to find out about that is IAEA. And they've given it a clean sheet. And guess now what we are trying to do, right? We've lost the plot. Whether terror, they know it's not there. Funding has not stopped. And all of a sudden, nuclear. So what do we want to do? IAEA must monitor rogue Pakistan's nuclear weapons arsenal. So Rajnath now has only become the speaker, right? I know. Missiles for military drones for intel sites, airport ops, firms clearance junked amid Turkey rift, right? Put Pakistan nuclear arsenal under IAEA watch, says India, right? That really is going to happen. And this is what Trump continues to do. Desi diaspora set to take 1.6 billion hit as US plans bill to tax. What kind of a friend is he, right? What kind of alliance is that? What kind of quad is that, right? Pakistan appealed to India, rethink suspension of Indus Treaty. I think we might have to, right? And, while we do this, right, just to remember, I'm going to read this out. This is really sad. What's up with the Bhakt community on winners and losers? There is a broad consensus beyond India and Pakistan that Pakistan won the air war. India won the rocket war. Pakistan won the diplomatic war. The overall winner was the Pakistan army and its chief, who were able to refurbish their image, at least for now. One is a relative word. Probably our Air Force was caught off guard by the Pakistan capabilities and will probably be better prepared next time around. The damage to Pakistan airfields is exaggerated and did not impair its operations in any material way. It is also agreed that both sides wanted an out and hence welcomed the American proposal. Our beloved Prime Minister was all set to announce a ceasefire in his own inimitable way, presumably claiming India, or should I say Bharat for the faithful, had achieved all its goals. This was to be followed by a blitzkrieg of frenzied, orchestrated hallelujahs by the media and the faithful. That is where his old friend Doland, followed by his Secretary of State, spoiled the party by jumping the gun and cornering the glory for themselves with statements that reserved decades of Indian domestic and foreign policy. Containing the fallout has led to another foreign policy predicament. Our foreign minister rebutted Trump's pronouncement on his role in the ceasefire, even though Trump has repeated the claim several times in the presence of heads of state and domestic channels. And this too at a time when he was flushed with his triumph in the Middle East and halt to the trade war with China. So Trump, ever the hegemon, but put Modi in his place by directing Tim Cook of Apple not to shift to India, and announced India has agreed to zero tariffs with America, much to the consternation of our policymakers. This is where it stands, really. India-Pakistan ceasefire cements a dangerous baseline. Now, this is really the problem, is the baseline. Now, we escalated so fast, we've changed the name of the game for both parties. Don't think that we are going to be sitting pretty just because we have missiles and an S-400 system. They are going to do damage too, right? And they are going to escalate it the same amount, right? And that's where, folks, is the problem. Then you have this. Michael Kugelman, what does he write? Disinformation spirals in India and Pakistan. And that's exactly what it was. He says the crisis yielded numerous unsettling takeaways, chief among them being the willingness of both nuclear states to deploy significant force. Each side launched missiles and drones deep into the other's territory to target military sites. What also stands out is the dangerous escalation and use of another weapon, disinformation. Disinformation proliferated throughout the latest India-Pakistan crisis. Fact checkers compiled social media threads showing how photos and videos purporting to depict the confrontation were actually images from other locations and in many cases video games. One of the most viral misleading posts viewed nearly 1.5 million times on X sought to pass off Iranian missile strikes on an Israeli airbase last year as Indian missile strikes against Pakistan. Perhaps the most stunning example of disinformation came late on Friday local time when several Indian media outlets posted wildly inaccurate claims alleging that an insurgent group had seized the Pakistani city of Quetta, that port of Karachi, Pakistan's financial capital, was destroyed, and that the Pakistani army chief Asim Munir was arrested. The World Economic Forum recently ranked India as the country most at risk for misinformation and disinformation. Get that, fool. And then what's our defense stocks? Oh, Chengdu went up, down. Just remember, defense stocks advance as enemies retreat the gates. But look at the names. Names you've never heard of and you don't know what they make, right? But amongst them, Cochin Shipyard and Garden Reach are ships. So Indian stocks, defense stocks, are going up on the thought that the government's going to have to spend a lot of money on defense. The Chinese stocks, on the other hand, are going up because of performance, and they think that there are going to be a lot of orders because they're going to they're allowed to, they're going to be showcasing their J17s and 10s at both Farnborough and in Paris, right? Then what do you have? This is very interesting. Did anybody know that Hafiz Saeed, the mastermind of the 26/11 Mumbai attacks, remains one of the world's most wanted terrorists? Yet soon after Modi became Prime Minister in 2014, Ved Pratap Vaidik, a known Modi and RS sympathizer, travelled to Pakistan and met him. Did anybody know that? It's been wiped right off, right? What else do we have on the world brief, right? But like I said, hang out to dry. So good old Netanyahu is being hung out to dry. Mass casualties across Gaza. As Israel ramped up its military campaign in Gaza on Wednesday, launching a barrage of airstrikes across the territory, despite mounting international pressure for Israel to re-establish a ceasefire with Hamas. Wednesday's strike come as Washington tries to secure a ceasefire deal with Israel and Hamas after talks with the Trump administration. Hamas on Monday released an Israeli-American hostage in what the group said was part of the steps being taken to achieve a ceasefire and a gesture of goodwill ahead of US President Donald Trump's 3-day Persian Gulf tour and without Israeli involvement, right? That's the important part. Historic hello. Trump met Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara in Saudi Arabia on Wednesday, a day after announcing that Washington will lift sanctions on Damascus to give them a chance to rebuild. This was the first time in a quarter of a century that the two country leaders have met and has signified a major step for Syria to reintegrate itself onto the global stage after a decade of isolation under deposed former President Bashar al-Assad. So you can say where terrorism stands. Nowhere. This guy has a $10 million ticket on his head like Osama bin Laden. Easing the trade war, the United States and China officially rolled back, and that's important. But this is something that both Modi and Netanyahu have to figure out for themselves. This week should terrify Benjamin Netanyahu. This is why, says Jonathan Friedland, the President Middle East made one thing clear: he will betray his one-time ally in a heartbeat. He's already doing it. US and China announced big tariff rollbacks, and how does that affect India? One will have to find out, right? A weekend of US-China negotiations in Geneva has produced a dramatic de-escalation in trade tensions to the relief of battered global markets, but a surprisingly amiable atmosphere and mutual bonhomie seems to have contributed to the success and speed of the agreement, US Trade Representative Jameson Greer told a press conference. My God, man, what a change in the attitude of both China and You really can't say. Ultimately, it may be better to think of this as a mutual step back from a gunfight rather than as either side blinking, but questions remain about what will happen next. US China agreed to temporarily roll back most tariffs for talks, and that's going to be forever. Factional fighting, days of intense clashes in Libya capital eased on Wednesday after the government declared a ceasefire and with armed groups. There are a lot of stuff happening in the Middle East, right? Has become the focus. That's why India and Pakistan, China's gained what it had to. India's lost what it had to, right? A lot. Trump isn't following the script on Israel. In dealing with Netanyahu, the US president appears to actually be living up to his campaign slogan to put America first. What does he say? Says the only thing more certain than the sun rising in the east and setting in the west is that a Republican president will always support Israel, and the Democratic president will largely do the same while being blamed for the opposite. But Trump is a different thing altogether, because what does he say? And yet, US President Donald Trump is visiting the Middle East this week, and his trip does not include Israel, despite lobbying from Netanyahu government for him to do so. Wow. He recently negotiated a ceasefire with the Houthis in Yemen, even though their stated intention is to continue striking Israel. He even removed his national security advisor, Mike Waltz. Do you know why? Reportedly in part for the sin of coordinating potential strikes on Iranian nuclear sites with Israel officials without consulting him. Man, nasty, right? Nasty. On Tuesday, US President Donald Trump began the first major foreign trip of his second term, a 3-day Middle East tour. He's making stops in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, seeking flashy investment deals, and he got them. Notably, Trump's trip does not include a visit to Israel. Trump may not be about to break with Israel completely, but it seems increasingly clear from his conduct that America first may not have an exception for Israel after all. Right. And for India, right. Then you have this. And he's cut off direct contacts with Benjamin Netanyahu amid growing bilateral tensions. And who's reported this? Farouk Hanedar and Ginzin, my God, from Israel, right? That's been reported, right? Now, the US may be getting close to an agreement with Iran. NBC earlier reported that Iran is willing to forego nuclear weapons in exchange for immediate sanctions relief. Oil tanked on speculation that the deal would increase the odds of oversupply later this year. Russia has sunk, right? Why Khamenei is betting on Trump, the calculus behind Iran's stunning reversal on a new nuclear deal. What is that, folks? Have you guys heard that, or you're still thinking about those nuclear blasts in possibly those tunnels in Pakistan, right? Non-existent. Since mid-April, diplomacy between Tehran and Washington has shifted into overdrive. After a 7-year freeze, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has made a stunning, if not entirely surprising reversal. He has greenlit a new nuclear deal if US President Donald Trump accepts Tehran's basic red lines. While the fourth round of talks between the two countries last week in Oman contained no apparent breakthrough, both sides seem determined to continue negotiating. In 2019, when Trump sent Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to Tehran to open up talks with Iran leaders, Khamenei vowed never to negotiate with the US president, whom he called that man. Sheer defiance is no longer an option. Pressured by sanctions, economic turmoil, and the threat of war, Khamenei has opted for diplomacy. And guess who doesn't like it? It's Netanyahu. Israel strikes fully disable Yemen's key airport in Sana'a. This was being done after US announced a unilateral ceasefire with the Houthis. 80 killed in US strikes on fuel port in Yemen. This was before that. Right. Golden age of the Middle East. That's what it's been called, right? And that's the best part. Golden age of the Middle East, right? Where's India? You know, after this strike, even the Iranians are asking for the J-10s and the J-7 Titan. Go figure that, right? Go figure that. And our LCA, which we've not even been able to deliver to our Air Force, we are trying to pawn it off to all different places, right? And the Pinaka, which we thought the French would buy, they didn't, right? In the United States, we announced the golden age of America, Trump said at the Saudi-US Investment Forum in Riyadh. and with the help of the people of the Middle East, the people in this room, partners throughout the region, the golden age of Middle East can proceed right alongside of us. And he never allowed India to say that. Trump expressed hope that the White House could negotiate a deal with Iran to curb its proxy influence and ensure that Tehran never obtains a nuclear weapon. At the same time, Trump appeared to deprioritize White House efforts to convince Saudi Arabia to sign the Abraham Accords. Now, this is really important. And the only thing going for India at this time is this: India-UAE bond that goes beyond business. The partnership remains agnostic of passing technologies and trends, whether in shifting geopolitical climates or economic challenges. The UAE and India have always forged ahead together. But that's okay. But given the choice, UAE did not come out on the side of India. So politically, geopolitically, we are now out to dry like Nathan. It's like, let's call it the N and M series, Netanyahu and Modi series. So many parallels in the last 10-15 days between the two. Right? So many parallels, including that Umang Kohli fellow saying, oh, Israeli plane has landed somewhere. I mean, what that was doing in India, nobody knows. Right? But here's the truth, folks. To the believers, if you want to improve your strength, you really have to acknowledge what went wrong. If you don't acknowledge what went wrong, you will never set it right. And chest thumping, finger wagging, and sending Shashi Tharoor all over the place is not going to change anything. Shashi Tharoor, the way he beats up on the West, that's about all he does. Right? That's about all he does. But it's a shame for most of our citizens who have been lied to repeatedly for the last 10 to 11 years, folks. I am shattered. I thought my Air Force was up to the mark. Now I'm afraid and willing to say that it's not. Jai Hind and 3 cheers.